Okay, there we go. Is it recording?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
According to 2020, A Vision for the Future of Counseling, the independent practice of counseling encompasses the provision of professional counseling services to individuals, groups, families, couples, and organizations through the application of accepted and established mental health counseling principles, methods, procedures, and ethics. Counseling promotes mental health wellness, which includes the achievement of social, career, and emotional development across the lifespan, as well as preventing and treating mental disorders and providing crisis intervention. Counseling includes, but is not limited to, psychotherapy, diagnosis, evaluation, administration of assessments, tests, and appraisals, referral, and the establishment of counseling plans for the treatment of individuals, couples, groups, and families with emotional, mental, addiction, and physical disorders. Counseling encompasses consultation and program evaluation, program administration within and to schools and organizations, and training and supervision of interns, trainees, and pre-licensed professional counselors through accepted and established principles, methods, procedures, and ethics of counselor supervision. LPCs approach mental health from a wellness model rather than a medical model. This means that counselors do not see individuals as being sick, rather as needing support and guidance to manage their lives. Counselors put an emphasis on providing a non-judgmental, compassionate, and safe space for their clients to explore concerns. They strive to empower diverse individuals, families, and groups to accomplish mental health, wellness, education, and career goals. Would you like to have a counselor in your life? Visit counseling.org to find one today.
Thank you. Next slide, please. As you can see, we are impacting every aspect of life. So I just want to let you all know that normalizing this feeling of being overwhelmed and stressed comes with being in the field. It happens. And particularly it happens with new clinicians. And so I thought it would be beneficial to really explore these topics as we move forward in our discussion. So the topics covered, we're gonna look at stress, emotional fatigue, and burnout. We're gonna look at what the facts say pertaining to mental health professionals, risk factors and stress fatigue, adverse implications, self-care models for clinicians, and moving forward, considerations for moving forward. Next slide, please. So here's some key definitions that I wanted to kind of bring out today. First of all, what is stress? This term is such a debated term with regards to how do we define it? What does it look like? I have here that it was coined by Haynes Siley in 1936, and the term has been debated for many years. My personal definition of stress is our ability to adapt. We all know that stress is also viewed as the body's reaction to any change that occurs or that requires an adjustment or a response, and that these changes can be physical, they can be mental or emotional. Stress also triggers the flight or fight response, which impacts our immune system while altering our hormones. If you notice, I've included here the human function curve, and I included that because it does a great job explaining stress and distress, and how stress, when it's normalized, actually motivates our performance. It enhances us, and it causes us to operate in this comfort zone that's indicated in the shaded area of the diagram. But you notice that when we are over our hump, ultimately when we're working beyond our comfort zone, then it becomes detrimental, and it has an adverse effect and impact on our well-being, okay? You notice there that the peak of this particular curve here is fatigue, which leads me to the next definition here, which is compassion or emotional fatigue. Now, typically, this term is associated with psychological and physical exhaustion, the strain of being empathetic towards individuals suffering with traumatic experiences. I've also found that just in counseling in general, it can be very, very taxing when we're carrying and bearing the cares and the concerns and the issues that others have that we're trying to help them to navigate through. And then the last one, not the last one, but burnout. Burnout is the gradual and progressive process that occurs when work-related stress results in emotional exhaustion or the inability to depersonalize client experiences and a decreased sense of accomplishment. And burnout is becoming a growing problem and issue in the field. It ultimately is the end result of unmanaged stress, compassion, emotion fatigue, vicarious trauma. And you notice the exhaustion on the human function curve, that it actually is going downward towards that burnout section there. Lastly, self-care. What is self-care? Self-care is simply put, a restorative act which is often characterized as a ritual or routine to help preserve self and professional work. Next slide, please. So there we go, yep. Some facts that I thought was very interesting in my research that I wanted to bring out today. Mental health professionals are 6 times more likely to experience adverse traumatic stress responses than clients. And this is likely due to the repeated exposure of hearing individual stories, dealing with people who have traumatic experiences over and over again. Research indicates that trauma exposure adversely impacts certain regions of the brain, of the child's brain, and the same is indicative for mental health professionals who are perpetually exposed to trauma, although there is limited research. I thought that was very, very interesting. Also, studies suggest variances in the correlation between stress and compassion fatigue and burnout when systems are in place to support helpers. The lack of support shows a direct correlation between emotional exhaustion, work productivity, and burnout. All right, next slide, please. Here's some more facts. Human service professionals are at a high risk of burnout, and research has shown that mental health professionals are experiencing burnout. This next statistic really just really shocked me, but it says, according to a survey conducted by ACA, and this was in 2010, 75.7% of mental health professionals reported that impaired mental health professionals are a significant threat to the profession. And 63.5% of mental health professionals reported knowing a colleague with whom they considered impaired. That is absolutely, I was totally amazed at that. But this is also another reason, another call for self-care, another urgency for us to take care of ourselves first and foremost. Burnout and compassion fatigue are multi-dimensional constructs. In other words, there's many layers. So you just don't end up being burnt out. It's a combination of many things and it's multi-layered. And I'll go into that a little more later in the presentation. Based on the CBI, which is the Counseling Burnout Inventory, and the 5-Factor Wellness Inventory Form A, there is a direct correlation between exhaustion, deterioration, and coping self. We'll talk a little bit more about coping self and the types of self that we need to care for. Next slide, please. So what are some of the risk factors associated with compassion fatigue and burnout? Some of these risk factors are newer clinicians, job demands, working long hours. I know that when I came into the field, I was working much longer than I was accustomed to. I started off in community-based, and I'm still in community-based, so that meant a heavy caseload. Vicarious traumatization, demands for short-term therapy. That's not necessarily the same for community-based. Usually for community-based, it's a little longer. Financial constraints, managed care limitations. That's a huge piece too. Imposter syndrome, licensure, clinical supervision, and the certification process. That process alone, I know personally when I think about the journey, it was very, very stressful, and I had to be very intentional. And I think it was very interesting once I really learned that each state abided by its own rules, and there was no, everything wasn't the same. It really overwhelmed me because the state that I was in, that I am in, Georgia, it changed 2 times during my graduate program. And that brought a serious amount of stress in my life. And so it became very important for me to be intentional about self-care. And once again, this is a passion of mine. Yeah, it's a passion of mine. I can talk on and on about it. Next slide. Okay, so what are some of the adverse implications? What are the signs of burnout? What are the signs of burnout? What happens if I fail to address my emotional and physical needs? Okay, I think a lot of times we try, and because we have such huge hearts and such a passion to help others, that we overlook the signs, we overlook making sure that we are taken care of. So what happens? What are some of the adverse implications? Anxiety, insomnia, depression, depersonalization, lack of appetite, feeling drained constantly, apathy, frequent illness. I said that I was interested in one day finding out research on how many therapists actually deal with cancer and have been diagnosed with cancer. And cancer is a particular interest because, you know, when we hold on to things, it kind of grows like, someone said callousness. Yes, callousness. I see that. I agree. And it grows and eats at us. And I'll just be curious to know, because of confidentiality, because we're bearing so much and we can't always share, you know, I just wonder how much are we carrying inside of other people's stuff, not even our own needs, but of other people's needs. How much are we carrying and bearing? Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, I view self-care as a restorative act, a ritual designed to protect all aspects of the clinical self. So this is actually the older PowerPoint, but it's okay. Just as burnout is multidimensional, personal wellness is as well. There are various aspects of self to be cared for. And the 5-factor wellness inventory reflects 5 versions of self. And if you have a pen and paper, please write these down. The 5 versions of self include creative self, thinking, that's the thinking, emotions, control, work, and positive humor. Then there's the coping self, which is leisure, stress management, self-worth, and realistic beliefs. Then there's social self, which consists of friendship and love, and essential self, spirituality, gender identity, cultural identity, and self-care. So these 5 aspects of self, right, are areas that we're to really be intentional about, I love this definition by Perlman, where it says, self-care is defined as the antidote therapists utilize to prevent or ameliorate the disruptions, in frame of reference due to vicarious traumatization. So self-care is an antidote, the therapist's antidote to ensuring that we're continuing to provide. Can I state those again? Yes, I can state them again. The 5 versions of self: creative self. That's the thinking, emotional, control, work, and positive humor. Then coping self: leisure, stress management, self-worth, realistic beliefs. Third one, social self: friendship and love. Essential self: spirituality, gender identity, cultural identity, and self-care. And then the 5th one I left out, I'm sorry, is physical self: nutrition and exercise. So it's creative self, coping self, social self, essential self, and physical self. All factors of self must be maintained and cared for to prevent burnout and ineffective client treatment. I have this picture of the glass here intentionally because when I think of our sessions with our clients, it's like they're drinking from our empathy, our reflective listening, our commitment to safety and confidentiality, our guidance, our help, our compassion. And with each sip, water leaves our cups. It leaves our cup. And if we're not diligent, if we're not intentional about self-care, we eventually find ourselves empty, depleted. And a depleted counselor is an ethically compromised one because we can no longer serve the client empathetically and effectively. Remember, self-care is your antidote. And it's also the antidote to ensuring that you're continuing to provide effective, efficacious services to our clients, to the people that we feel deeply for. All right. So if your cup is always empty, how can your clients drink from your professional cup? It's a question for us to just think about. Okay. Slide 10. Next slide. So the next slide 10, next one. Okay. So create your own self-care plan. All right. Today, I just want to challenge you. I want to challenge us to think ahead. And if you are a counselor, a counseling trainee, to think now and to implement this now, because it will go far in your work, okay? And it'll get you far. You can start by asking yourself, do I understand the importance of taking care of me and the role that it has on my work as a therapist? What is my self-care plan? What is my ritual? How will I protect myself from the emotional and physical exhaustion associated with helping others? Helping others isn't a bad work. It's a beautiful work. But we also understand it's a very exhausting work. It's a taxing work. It's a draining work. It's important to, first of all, understand that self-care is a priority, not an option. Not an option. All right? Make it a priority. Healthy distancing and professional boundaries. This can be such a challenge, particularly for newer clinicians who want to be accessible to clients all the time, may not understand how to distance themselves from work, leaving work at work, especially now with COVID-19. I've been very intentional because everybody's doing teletherapy, but I've been very intentional about setting a schedule and doing work in a certain part of my living space. I don't do work, and I try my best not to do work in my bedroom, because that's not what my bedroom is for, right? Setting the boundaries, putting the distance between my work, my professional work, and myself, because you don't want the two to get so enmeshed that you're unable to leave it where it needs to be. And that doesn't mean you don't care, because I think sometimes we think that potentially that means, especially newer clinicians, that we don't care. But it doesn't mean that. It means the exact opposite, that you do care. And you understand that making yourself first is the priority. So mentally leaving work at work. Utilize a transition plan from work to home. So once COVID-19 is done, give yourself a period of time, maybe it's 15 minutes, where you transition in your car or at home. I know that there was a time when I was out in the field, we'll come home, my first 15 minutes, I'd sit down on my couch in the dark and just kind of transition, right? To kind of get the weight of my work off of me so that I could be what I needed to be at home for my loved ones, for me and for my loved ones. Use thought-stopping visuals if you need to. If work pops up in your mind, just like we teach our clients about thought-stopping, stop the thought. Insert another thought. Self-care is a priority. I care for myself. And if I'm going to continue being effective, I have to take time to separate from that. All right. Set aside time to self-reflect and practice quiet time before sessions. I do that. And it's one of the things I've started doing at home since COVID-19 is I won't book my sessions back to back. What I try to do is so funny. I try to give myself 30 minutes between each session, or maybe even an hour. And somewhere in between there, I might sneak a power nap in so I can recharge. That's one of the beauties of working, at home, so I can recharge for my next session. Because even sitting in front of the computer, going back to back to back, that can be very, very taxing. Very taxing on your eyes, on your body, okay? Perform internal emotional check-ins on a regular basis. Check in with yourself. Check in with your emotions. Be sure that what you're carrying is not something from your client. And if it is, monitor your responses to that, and then get some help. Get some help by maybe reaching out to another peer-to-peer accountability, or you can do that through consultation, through coaching, through mentorship. I reach out to my mentors, my coaches when I need to. I do it all the time. I'm not afraid to say, hey, I need help. Or I'm not afraid to say, hey, let me check in with you about, or I want to talk to you about how I'm feeling regarding some of the clients and some of the cases that I have. I think I might be carrying some of this. Can you help me to put it to the side? Do something you love. Treat yourself. Treat yourself. Mindless activity. Mine is Netflix. You all may laugh. I think that can be extremely, I'm looking at comments here. I think that can be extremely difficult when, okay, I'll look back at that. Mindless activity. For me, it's Netflix. To do things where I don't have to think. Oh, perform internal emotional check-ins. Yes, very difficult for us to do. I agree, Dr. Christopher, I do agree. Learn a new hobby, cook a new dish, take a drawing class, eat well, exercise. The eating well and the exercising is critical as well. Be surprised, what a difference it makes when your body, I've been on this quest to be more conscientious of what I'm eating and exercising. And while I've been home, I've actually lost weight because I've been intentional not to let the weight of everything that's happening in my clients weigh on me. Get plenty of rest and drink tons of water. Personally, I try to drink a gallon a day. Everybody can't do a gallon a day, but do as much water as you can. It keeps you hydrated, right? Meditation and yoga, or it could be prayer. It could be journaling. This is just some ideas that I saw and some that I added based on things that I've done, that I am doing that I think would be beneficial. Next slide, please. I just want to just really say, you can be as creative as you like. Just make sure you do it. The point here is to value yourself enough to care for you first and foremost. So here are my thoughts on how I would love to see the field move forward concerning self-care. Revamp graduate programs to include self-care and personal reflection. The one thing I appreciated about this program is that was a part of every class. But once I graduated, I quickly learned that was not the case with many of my fellow clinicians. All right. Organizational self-care and wellness models. This is uber important, especially as a newer clinician, as it sets the tone for your work ethic. As a regional manager, I have incorporated self-care with my staff, and it's something that I also include in my interviewing process. I actually inquire of the therapist, what are they doing? What is your self-care plan? What is your ritual? Because I tell them, if you're burnt out, you're not adding any value to the team or to the clients, right? I want you replenished, right? Let's see. I would love to see us tie self-care more into ethical models. And although ACA does a great job with the task force, I would love to see it explicitly clear how the failure to practice self-care is a threat to the field, like we saw in the research. And finally, more research, all right? I would love to see us dive more into how important self-care is and how self-care as therapists can actually model healthy behavior patterns for our clients. I think more research is needed to normalize self-care. And I trust that the information that I have shared today will actually provoke you to make this a priority, and that you'll practice it. Next slide. Speaking of practice, oh, you don't have the slide with my meditation. I wanted us to do an actual meditation. You don't have that slide?
No, sorry, that's the last slide.
Okay, so I'll send out the meditation, but I found a wonderful 3-minute meditation, mindfulness meditation to relieve stress that I wanted to share with you all. And I wanted you all to participate with me, and I'll have it sent out so you all can see it. But there's a list of my references. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, I'm more than glad to take them at this time. Oh, I did that really fast. Oh, I thought it was going to be longer. Oh, here are a few books that I wanted to recommend. I had this book, The 4 Agreements, in my graduate program. It's a great book to reference, to keep with you. It's a staple that I recommend. And then this was another one in my graduate program on being master therapist, practicing what you preach. It's another good one. I see questions. Were there questions in the chat?
Jesaira, do you have the meditation? If you do, you can just do it and people can follow along.
It was it wasn't a guided meditation.
Oh, okay.
It was a YouTube, yeah. It was
okay.
very nice, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but I'll make sure that.
Yeah, we may definitely ask lots of questions, and then one of the things we may want to do to help, because we've got to go to at least 50 minutes, so we want to make sure we could potentially have people commit to self-care, right?
Yes.
And that would be a good plan too.
Yes, absolutely. Do you have questions? I see someone. Let me see, I can't. Agencies can be brutal. Yes. So with working in community counseling can definitely be a challenge. However, because you're able to typically schedule your own sessions, my recommendation to my therapist has always been not to exceed, when you're in a community, not to exceed four sessions a day. The biggest struggle in my self-care is professional boundaries. Yeah. Any tips on working? Yes, did that help as far as working in community agencies? 3 to 4 clients. Yeah, 3 to 4 clients a day when you're in community-based. Yes, and sometimes the caseloads are a lot. I'm fortunate to sit in the seat where I can manage that for my therapist. One of the other things that I've done that I implemented is every 90 days, I'll go to my therapist and ask them, have they scheduled a day off? That's me modeling and also creating a space for them to be able to recharge. And typically it's usually at that 90-day mark where you're feeling like, I need a break. And for some of us, it could be sooner, but I find for myself, it's usually at the 90 days, I'm looking for another day off.
I have a question.
Sure.
You put up a quote earlier about the glass being empty.
Yes.
Can you tell me what that quote was one more time? Because I really liked it, but I couldn't remember the wording.
Yes, I was saying, let me go back because I want to get it right. I want to say it exactly how I wrote it. Just a second. Okay. I said with every sip, was that it? With every sip, water leaves the cup, or was it the question?
It was the question about your glass.
Yeah. The question at the end, I didn't have it in my notes. Essentially, the question was, if you're empty, if your professional cup is empty, how can you, if your personal cup is empty, how can you give your professional cup, or something along those lines?
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. I'll make sure that you get the presentation, the updated one though, because the updated one also has the 5 versions of self. We have 10 minutes to make sure you be able to, one of my favorite meditations is the tree meditation. I imagine myself as a tree. Yeah, that's nice. Tree meditation. I've never tried that one. I'll have to try it. I didn't put music on there, but music is definitely another one to include music. If you need more than a day off, how do you go about that as far as taking care of your clients? Okay, so I think that, just like when we're scheduling vacation time, that I think part of setting that boundary is also managing client expectation. And when you don't present yourself as being the savior to the client, but rather a facilitator, a helper, is easier than for you to take a few days off without compromising client care. The other thing I found in community-based is a lot of times we're meeting with clients every week that don't necessarily need to be met with every week, but can be met with every other week, and we can spread out our scheduling so that we're not burning ourselves out. I think because of the productivity piece that's attached to community-based, if you have a large caseload, you can take those 30 clients and not see those 30 clients every day of the month, or every week rather, but spread them out. So you're seeing them twice a month, so that then you're not as stressed and you're still meeting your productivity goal. I don't know if that makes sense.
Sarah, this is Dr. LA. I'd say something about that too, because when I was a young mother and I was working and just starting my private practice, I thought, okay, if I see back-to-back sessions, I'll be able to get home quicker to my kid, you know, to be able to get home to my older child, and, you know, I'll be able to be a mom and, you know, have both what I want. But what ended up happening is when I tried to cram everything into a smaller section of time, by the time I finished my day, I had nothing else to give to my family. And so it was a really hard lesson at first to learn that I needed that time. I needed to be able to write my case notes because I didn't want to carry work home. When I left the practice, I wanted it to be a clean break so that I could be a mom and I could focus on family and not be stressing over, oh, I got to write my notes still, and I'm exhausted from cramming everything in. So I like, you know, it is important to really think about how you're structuring your day.
Yes, I agree. This question, Catherine Bell, about politely ending sessions. Okay, so that's a great question. So one of the things that we do at my agency, we practice collaborative documentation. And collaborative documentation is an opportunity for the client to be a part of you writing the note-taking process. And if you train your client, right, at the 45-minute mark, or if you're doing 50-minute sessions at the 35-minute mark, that, hey, we're going to review what we talked about and then work together to enter the note into the system, you actually don't have to be overly concerned about doing a note after session. Now, some therapists don't like doing it that way, but when you're in community-based and it's productivity and it's high caseload and you have a 24 to 48 hour to get the note in, that is the most effective method to utilize, and it saves you emotional space because you're not taking the client with you once you leave the session. Because when we don't do the note, we have to take the client with us, right, in order to create ethical notes. In order for us, and if we have not done the note, then guess what? That night we still have that client session with us, because when we go to sit down to do the note, we have to go back to what happened. Versus when you're in the session, you write the note, you're done. It's done. You release it. You literally let it go. That's another form of practicing self-care. Now, I know for private practice, from what I'm told, the private practice, you typically have a little longer to enter notes, but not in community-based. Community-based is get the note in, get it done, get it out. We have to submit the claim for reimbursement. And so that's a way to really protect your time, your energy, your mental space, because you don't want to hold on to that. And I tell my therapists, you're doing your clients a disservice if you're holding on to what happened in sessions for a whole week and then you go back and write a note. You're guaranteed to miss something. That's important. Any other questions? Does that make sense? And yes, I agree with Dr. Christopher about clients. Clients are more forgiving and more welcoming about these things than you actually be surprised. I work with children and adolescents, and they actually enjoy, and I have adult clients as well, but they actually enjoy being included in their care. When I do collaborative documentation, they love it, especially for teenagers. It gives them or reinforces the sense of growing up and independence. And any other question? We have 7 more minutes here. In agency setting, I find it hard to say no to my supervisor when they ask me to do something extra. I normally, who is this? Kira Scott? You hate saying no. So a lot of times when it comes to saying no, I have found for myself, and I can only talk for myself, with regards to this, saying no was attached to my personal need for validation and me not wanting to appear as if I wasn't a team player. If you're consistent in your work, you're ethical in your work, and you go to your supervisor and sit and have a heart-to-heart conversation, I found that actually your supervisor will respect and honor you more and actually become a support system to you. But we're afraid to have that conversation because I think as therapists, we wear the badge of Superman, Superwoman. And I'm suggesting that we don't have to. I'm suggesting not to, because when we do, it actually compromises our work. Any other questions? Does that help? Did that help? Tell me if that's helping.
Jesaira, did you see the question about, did you happen to know the name of the meditation on YouTube?
Yeah. I'm gonna look, yes. As a matter of fact, what I can do is from my phone, I'll resend it to Caitlin. Is that okay?
Yes, and then we can post it in the chat, and we can also put it in the description when we post your recording.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Teresa wants to watch it now.
I hope that you all are getting something from this.
Yes.
Okay. Oh man. Bear with me. I'm gonna get it. Are there any other questions as I'm looking this up? I'm getting it. I'm coming.
Well, the one question they're asking, Carolyn Perez is asking, as far as graduate program reforms, what boundaries were in place that were most helpful to you going through your own training?
What boundaries were in place that helped me? Well, I think one of the things that was key was we were encouraged to always, Caitlin, here it comes, I'm sending it right now. We were encouraged always to reflect, right? We were always encouraged to do that emotional internal check. So there was absolutely no way for us to get away from it. It's like I said, it became embedded in me, and it is definitely, it is a practice. I don't do therapy without it. I can't do therapy without it. And so it's going to be hard to, well, it's kind of challenging if you haven't done it in the past, but start off with one thing at a time. Does that kind of make sense?
We have someone asking what the names of the books that you mentioned are.
Yes. Jennifer, here we go. Jennifer, I sent it to Jennifer. Caitlin's name didn't come up. Is Jennifer on the call? No.
She's not, but I'll let her know.
Here we go. I'll try again. It is the 4 agreements. Can you see that?
Which is actually required reading in our program.
This is required. Both of these are required, and I still go back to them. See, you see my point? On becoming a master therapist. Y'all see that one as well? Any other questions? What does it say? I'm wondering if there's any in-depth studies. Yes, so you know what? There isn't a whole lot of studies on self-care. It really isn't a lot of studies on it, which is why I'm passionate about it, and it's something that I'm really considering doing more research on, because there's very little. Yes, exactly. There's very little research out there. So like I said, to even make it clear that it is an ethical dilemma too. It's an ethical dilemma when we don't care for ourselves. If 75% of therapists said that impaired therapists are a threat to the field, you know, that's a problem. Okay, I tried to, I sent it. Did you all receive it?
Caitlin can try it again. I love that some of these suggestions that people are putting in the chat about how you're going to take care of yourself and how you practice self-care. And I'd really encourage others to contribute. Like, what do you do to practice self-care? What do you do to create that transition between being a clinician or a clinician in training and being, you know, who you are outside of that role?
Yeah.
I love it.
You make a personal commitment too. You make a personal commitment. I think the other piece is we have to value ourselves. You know, we really have to value ourselves. Naps are amazing. I don't know why I fought them as a kid, because as an adult, I absolutely love a good nap, especially on a Sunday. Did you all get it?
There is another question from
Yes.
Liliana. In school, I have been learning about termination from the client/patient side, but what about from the counselor's standpoint, like grieving the therapeutic relationship?
And that is very real. That is an amazing question. Great question. I think that part of getting through that is normalizing the fact that it's okay to grieve the therapeutic relationship, and getting the support by talking it out peer to peer, or consultation, or finding a mentor. If you're still in school, I will talk to my teachers. My teachers were amazing. But some clients, you actually will grieve the end of that termination, just like they are grieving. I think, and I think that's also the beauty in what we do. It's the authenticity of who we are. If you're not impacted by your client and by the work, then I question why you're in the field, right? And so I don't think grieving the therapeutic relationship is something to frown upon, but rather acknowledge, normalize, and walk through it like your client would. The other thing is, we want to remember too that we're there to facilitate. We're not there to be in our clients' lives forever, right? We're there to make an impact and to move when it's time for us to move, or for time for them to move. It's great questions. She's posting it now. Hold on. Okay. Any other questions?
Type it, but I'm getting it in there.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? These are great questions. Any other questions? Great. Did that help? I'm just wondering if it helped. Me answering that question.
And I just posted the meditation for everybody. Thank you for sending that, Jesaira.
Okay, sure, no problem. Do you want them to end with that?
Yeah, I mean, I can, or, you know, I don't know if I could share. How long is it, you know?
3 minutes, just 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah, let's end with that. So here we go. I will bring it up real quick.
Yep, 3 minutes.
My kids are gonna have to be quiet for a second though. Oh, it didn't come up. All right, what did I do wrong? Okay, I entered it wrong somehow. Hold on. Hold that thought.
Okay. Man.
YouTubes are not easy to copy.
Oh, I'm happy that this was a great ending to the conference. Yay.
JZ6NK. Here we go. All right, hold on, let me get this.
One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right.
Mindful breathing. Close your eyes and rest your hands on your knees. Bring your attention to the touch of your body on your seat. Feel the weight of your body on your chair or cushion. Make sure that your back is straight and that you're comfortable. Take a few deep breaths. While you're breathing deeply, relax your shoulders, your stomach muscles, the muscles in your face, your hands, and your legs. Let go of all the tightness in your body. Now bring your attention back to your breath. Notice what it feels like as it enters through your nose, goes down through your throat, filling your lung, and back out through your nose. Notice your stomach and chest rise and fall each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. And just allow your breathing to be natural and relaxed. Now bring your attention to the feeling of your breath in your nose. Feel your breath as it comes in and goes out. Just focus on this sensation, paying attention to each time you breathe in and each time you breathe out. As you inhale, maybe your breath feels cool. And as you exhale, maybe it feels a little warmer. When your mind wanders, or if you become distracted, just notice what's going on in your head, and then gently bring your attention back to your breath, going in and out. Focus on the feeling of your breath and allow thoughts and feelings to come and go in the background. Now gently bring your attention back to the touch of your body on your seat and open your eyes.
Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, thank you. And Josie, you're more than welcome to email me the private question. I'll tell you all about that. I will also tell you, I don't know, Jesaira, if you use it, calm.com.
I do use Calm, yes.
I love calm.com.
Calm is good, yes.
Yeah. Jesaira, you are amazing. It's just so wonderful to see you and connect with you.
Good to see you too. It's good to see you too. Hugs, hugs, hugs.
Hugs, 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 hugs. Virtual hugs.
Exactly. Thank you all.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, Josie, I'm putting it in the chat.